People, Watson's great, but there's another side of data collection like that. Apps, any platform that's collecting, that you're not even thinking that it's collecting. It's great, some of it's bad, but it does serve a purpose, and it's a matter of understanding what that purpose is for you as an individual. But I'm going to talk about this in the context of the future. You know, like the future of AI. Yeah, there's a future, all right. Let's talk about, as Tiffany was talking about, generation alpha. I'm not even talking about alpha. I want to talk about, generation Charlie, because that's really the context I want you to think about this in. Because if you're a Generation Z right now, a Charlie might be your grandkid. And that's really what I want to focus on, is the advanced future. Because there are a lot of aspects of data collection you're not thinking about. What you're giving today has an effect on your children in the future. And these are just some of the things that people give today. They don't realize how it's affecting their grandchildren. You have a child today, you're not thinking about where somebody bought that gift from. So someone goes, you register, you're like, yeah, I want the top-end gifts. I am going to register for my baby shower at Tiffany's. And you're like, yeah. Can your friends afford gifts from Tiffany's? Maybe, maybe not. They might just get one smaller thing, which is still going to be overpriced and serve absolutely no purpose. It's not like your child is going to, it's solid. That's actually an arm weight for a baby. So it's like, what? What purpose? You're thinking about what information you are actually giving when you register for a baby registry. Just think about that. Mother's name, father's name. Maybe mother's name, mother's name. We're just going to stick with heterosexual right now. Sorry if you are not. Just works for me. But in the purposes of this conversation, what information? So you've given, the fact is, maybe you might have distinguished whether or not you are having a boy or a girl. You might be having twins. There's definitely the location factor, because where are those gifts going to be sent to? Then there's also the factor of when your child is going to be born. So you've already given away some points there. Then there's your name. What is your name going to have to do with it? We'll get back to that. Then you have the people that have registered not only at Tiffany's, but maybe at the Disney store, because then you can get everything focused around one Disney character. And guess what? If you registered at the Disney store, what does that say about you? It means you love Disney. That also means that they now have another profile about you. You love Disney, where you live, maybe possibly which friends buy from the Disney store, which friends buy from Tiffany's. So it's now giving you information and giving them information about your social circle. That has an impact. Then there is that friend that really can't afford any of those gifts, and they might buy you a car seat. Might not be the best car seat, but it serves a purpose. But when you're buying a car seat, does anybody actually think about the levels of car seats? You have your 75, 80-pound version. Actually, there isn't one under 100, I think, from what my friend was recently saying. So you get a 100-pound car seat. Then there's one that's maybe 150, maybe 200. It's got all the bells and whistles, the snaps. It just looks like, the godsend of like baby seats, car seats, that they're only going to sit in for, maybe 3 months, because then they outgrow them. But the issue is, and I would say, the health and safety ratings, the factors of what sort of materials went into, and I mean, there is a standard, but there's also the level. Somebody's going to add something, and that's why it's worth 220 pounds versus 100 pounds. They've added one more thing that makes it better. And when people are considering the safety of their children, they're going to go, I'm going to get the 220-pound one, because obviously there's something wrong with that 100-pound one. But what does it say about the person that cannot afford? Because nobody, when they registered for that baby registry, bought the car seat. What does that say about the person that then has to go out and buy the one that's 100 pounds? That's giving you an economic insight to somebody's lifestyle. So what will you do? So then, we're going to take a look at when that couple got together. Maybe they were using social media, as unfortunately a lot of people do now in their dating lives, use, say, something like Tinder. So those two people met via Tinder. But then, you know, they're hanging out. You've got a little bit of a social insight because they met on Tinder. So it's like, okay, they use apps and not afraid to use that to meet people and then begin a relationship. Instagram, another piece of insight. What you like to eat, where you're going on holiday, and definitely, you know, if you're an exercise freak, if you're a foodie, if you're a fashionista, if you really, really like a certain animal. I love penguins. Amazingly enough, there's only one picture of penguins, and they're not real ones on my Instagram feed. But it gives you insight. Then you have work. LinkedIn. It's a whole nother profile. Where you've worked, where you went to school, who your connections are, where they work. Then you feed in Facebook. Depends on how you use Facebook. I use Facebook, friends and families that are close to me. Not one of those big Facebook people, never have been. But still, that's how most people use Facebook. They generally use it to connect with friends and family, mainly because there is a subset of people that are older that like using Facebook. That's how they send pictures about their grandchildren. So Facebook, so you've got where you like to go to eat, what you like to do, sort of the visual aspects of your life. Then you've got LinkedIn, which is usually the professional aspects of your life. And then you've got Facebook, which is a little bit more personal. And guess what Twitter does, Bruce? It gives people usually the more external aspects of your life. Because even though there are a lot of Twitter accounts, there are very few that are protected Twitter accounts. So people are having interactions about their sociological beliefs, their political beliefs, also their personal beliefs, whether or not they like to interact with celebrities. Generally, they'll have conversations with people they absolutely detest on Twitter. They'll have conversations with people they absolutely love on Twitter. And then they just have those pieces of information that they're spitting out there. Read this article, it's really great, you should read it. That gives you more insight. So it's this whole package of information that's out there about you. So what will they now more understand about you? Guess what? You order food a lot. Where you order your food from, what card you're using, gives even more insight. So you're a foodie, you don't order from any of these. You actually go to those restaurants. And that's why you use a lot of Instagram, take pictures. So they go through your data and go, yeah, we don't have to do any of that. Or you live in a certain postcode and the nearest grocery store to you is Waitrose. That gives you two pieces of information. One, your geography, where you live. That's insight. Because then they can build a more perfect profile of you because you're probably likely to vote a certain way based on the demographics of where you live. You have probably some sort of income level based on where you live. And you shop at Waitrose because you can afford to. Whereas if you live in another part of, and I'm going to go with London, if you live in another part of London, you might have an Aldi near you, which builds in some aspects, because near you there's no Waitrose. But if they look at your banking history, occasionally you go to Waitrose somewhere else. So you're one of those people that can afford it, you're just not living in a location that's near it. So guess what? You're somewhere in the middle. But if you're living in an area where it is only an Aldi, a Lidl, a Morrison's, or a Poundland, there's definitely something that feeds into your economic history there that people can understand. And then I put Halal Eat up there. Shout out to Halal Eat. I am a equity holder. I mentored those guys. But the fact is, if you order from a specific sort of delivery company or web or app company, they know more about you. So Halal Eat, you're probably somebody who is Muslim, or you might be Jewish because you want kosher food, because you know any of the restaurants on that app are only going to be places that do not serve pork and have no alcohol. So they already have a very specific image of who you are. So what do they know? Recently, I don't know if anybody saw this, John Hancock, which is one of the oldest insurance companies in the US, decided, and by the way, I was born in Balham. So that's a piece of information I'm giving out. I don't normally, but I was born in Balham in London, so I'm a British American. Just putting it out there because the accent. And people go, oh, you know, she's American. British American. 2 passports, both pretty much useless, as Catherine said. Working on getting a Jamaican one. My grandfather was a cop, died in the line of action, so I'm like, woohoo, maybe I can get a Jamaican passport. No one hates Jamaicans. It's true. But John Hancock, they are the oldest, one of the oldest insurance companies in the US. And they recently put out a memo, directive, whatever you want to call it, saying, we are not going to sign any more companies up unless they have a program which is using some sort of health management application, social integration thing. It was really kind of weirdly worded, quite frankly. But basically, if your program at your company has said, okay, look, we're going to monitor your health using Fitbit, John Hancock's like, yeah, you can come onto our platform. You can be we can be your insurer. So based on where you eat, the profile, because people know that because you're using Instagram a lot, taking pictures of your food. Now we know where you work because you put it on LinkedIn. And now where you work has said, we need you to wear a Fitbit, or else you're not going to be able to be insured. Well, guess what? If you're eating at the wrong place, people are going to know because you've already put it on Instagram. But the Fitbit, that's just another piece of information about you, and it's getting more personal. The other stuff is a little not so personal because people do fudge when they're on LinkedIn or other external platforms. But the Fitbit, that's on you. That's going to tell whether or not you are eating badly. And trust me, we all eat badly, especially when you're at events like this. And so before, the NHS, government organization. And we're going to come back to the John Hancock and Fitbit thing. So the NHS, government organization, although we know it's soon to be privatized. And one of the fascinating things about the NHS is just the war chest of information they have on every single person that was born in this country. It's just you don't realize how much information they have about you. And the really scary thing is in the US, there's this company called Ged Match, Ged Match. Can't remember what the acronym stands for, it's not really important. Something about genetic, probably genetic engineer, I don't know. Basically, they are like it's a free online, not subscription, where you can just send them your DNA and they will match it using all of the databases that are available. And recently, law enforcement in the US has used it to capture, I think, 2 or 3 serial killers for dead cases, like cold cases. They could not find those people, but based on the genetic information that family members had given just because they wanted to find out, some sort of history, via ancestry.com, which is not as effective as this. This is very effective and it's free. Law enforcement has been using it. So when you think about the possible implications of all the information that the NHS has on every single person, and you feed in a free app like this, how much information is now being gathered about you without you not even being aware? Because this application is free, the government didn't need a warrant to go get that. It's a free application. They just go in and type in the information. Oh, who's on this database? Oh, okay. So you feed that in with something like the NHS. You feed that in with something like, oh, I don't know, John Hancock. So they now know all of your medical history. They've got access to understanding whether or not, oh wait, genetically, there's somebody in your family that has this attached. So they have this over here. Oh, we can't insure you because you might end up with something, oh wait, possibly diabetes. Just based on one, what you're eating, two, your genetic disposition, and three, well, we also know where you live and what you're going to be doing dietarily. It's all feeding in. That's just a great, fascinating picture, but also it's really scary because a lot of people don't think about just those micro details of information you're giving. You add up all that disparate data and it gets a very holistic picture of who you are. And this, I'm sorry people, I don't mean to depress you, but there's another thing, Spotify. This just depressed me so much. Spotify they just announced that they're going to be partnering with Ancestry to do this thing about, we want to know, based on your ethnicity or your background, we can figure out what type of music you may possibly like. So, black female, mid-80s. I'm a Gen X millennial border. Yeah, I have a fascination with the Smiths, one of my favorite groups. Unfortunately, Mars has gone downhill. But yeah, so not a big heavy rap fan, although I love Public Enemy. There are a couple, but yeah. So genetically, I should be like predisposed to liking Bob Marley because my family is, Caribbean. I've got a mix of Asian in there, hence the name. But my music taste, no Spotify. There is no way. If you look at one of my lists, you would not know. People do not know. They don't understand. But still, your average person is not going to be aware of that partnership. And there will be some sort of skewing of that information where they'll know more about you. So where will they go? In China. Sorry, I had to bring up China really fast. I'm not aware of what the time is. I'm going to go fast because I know people are hungry. In China, one of the things in China, and we all know China's surveillance state, but they've come up with this social capital system where basically they want to know everything about you. There are cameras all over China. I lived in China for a year in 2009. 2009 was when they actually had the blackout. You could not do anything. That's when the Great Wall actually was a really great big wall. And that was because they had riots and unrest in the north. And I always get it really, really wrong when I try to pronounce this, so I won't bother. It's the Muslim population in China that lives in the north, and they had riots there and unrest. And this was really then when the technology sort of flipped in China, and they said, well, we need a way to monitor these people. We need a way to be able to control them. And that's when they started testing the concept of having cameras everywhere, monitoring where anybody who was Muslim, what they did, who they spoke to, all of those key pieces of information that we use in the Western world to combat terrorism. And so they started using that, and then the technology started getting more advanced. And that's where it is today. And we don't realize when we're using things like, and I'm pulling in a lot of big things, a lot of different things, but it all makes sense in the end. In London, don't think they have them outside of London. BT recently launched this thing called BT Link. And they have these little pod things, these things over here. Gives you free Wi-Fi. So you can go from Streatham, which is in the southwest of London, all the way into the city center if you're taking a main road. If you take a main road from Streatham on a bus all the way into the center of London, Liverpool Street Station, you can get free Wi-Fi. You do not have to use your own data package. Free Wi-Fi provided by BT. So you only have to sign up with their agreement the first time you log on to that system. Nobody reads the small print. You go by each of those little system boxes, and every time you go by, you're connected Wi-Fi. So it's getting the geo-tracking location of where you're going. So it can pretty much already knows kind of where you live, but it's also seeing where you travel. And your mobile phone, we know, is already, it's basically just emitting everything about you. Just like, hello, aliens, come get me. You know exactly where I am. But you're giving away all of that information. People don't think about it. So it's traveling, where you're going, where you've been. You go into a store, you use your Apple Pay or your Android Pay. You're chatting on social media. If you have the geolocation part of your social media activated, it's not only knowing that you're on a bus going there, but even when you're tweeting and you send a picture, it's now got that tracked on that picture saying, I was at this location, even if you're not saying you were at this location. It's because sometimes it tells you to add it, but then it won't tell you to add it all the time because you just posted a picture. Add location? No. But it's already got that because you're on that and it already knows just based on your phone. So, when you're thinking about that child, what do they know before that child goes to school? All of that information. And why? Because that child's information comes from the parents. So they now have a firm picture of, one, what it's likely that your child is going to eat based on what the parents eat. Two, what is likely that the genetic disposition of that child is going to be based on any sort of DNA information that the NHS holds that you decided to upload to a system or a website like, Ancestry.com or Ged Match when they do come to the UK, because they are coming, and what music you might possibly want to listen to based on what your parents listen to, because that's going to be formed in your early years by your parents, although that is a little bit skewed because my parents didn't listen to Smiths. And then there is that whole other aspect of where it's a possibility that you're going to go on holiday, where you might end up going to university, or where you're going to work. All of those then go into the possibilities and probabilities of that child's life before it's even out of that baby car seat. And what I found entirely interesting, just completely fascinating, was this project, and I just don't get it. So Steve McQueen decided he wanted to do this project where he wanted to take a picture of every third-year child in primary school. And at first I thought, yeah, this is really great because everybody wants to have that history of when they were in school. But it's different now. When anybody who is on this planet right now, when you go to school and you get those pictures, you're like, yeah, that's really great. But for a child that's going to be born today even, a child that's going to be born in 20 years, this is not a good thing. If this becomes a precedent, this is not a good thing, because this picture is then going to be used in order to facial recognition your child. It's going to have more information in that one picture than we have right now, and it's going to be in one place. Right now, we have all this data out here that we have to put together to match. That picture is going to have it all in there already. One picture, all that information about one person before they even leave the room. That's not a good thing. So there are some areas of just privacy and security that we haven't even thought about because we think about them as silos. But for the future, we need to think about them as all connected. Not right now where they're not and we have to connect them. We need to think of it as that one piece instead of all those 50 pieces. And so I just like that picture. It's just why. And that was taken at CogX, which is an AI conference that took place in London this summer. And there was a lot of information at that conference, a lot of talk about the why, the Simon Sinek, the why of it. And while it makes our lives a lot easier, it makes our lives comfortable, we're thinking very short term. We're thinking about the tactical aspects. What makes it faster for us to go to the store? We want to be in touch with more people. We want to make sure that we can have the best experience. But it's very short-sighted because we need to think about what's going to make the best experience for everybody in the future. And while we are thinking future, we're not really thinking holistically about a future more advanced than grandchildren. We're very, very selfish as people. Even though we say we're not, we are. And that's what I was talking about with China. That's your social scoring. They have the social scoring right now. They're using it. It's already jumped the shark from 2009 to 2011, and now they have it really more advanced. And this is one of the problems that I have with Watson. I love Watson because, you know, I'm a tech person. But at the same time, some of the aspects scare me because there are countries like China where it is entirely beneficial for a negative gain for people. And the one thing I can say about technology is that you do need people that have dissenting points of view in order for any innovation to grow. And unfortunately, this is going to stifle growth in China because people are going to be worried about where they shop because that will play into their social score, who they talk to, that'll also play into their social score, who they're eating with, where they eat, where they went to school, whether or not they had a parking ticket, what they do for their children, that plays into that social score. Where they work, every single thing. So people will now be scared to have any dissenting point of view. People now will be really, really overjoyed if your parents are wealthy and you live in a great area and your score is really high. But for somebody whose score is really low, there's no chance of social mobility. It's not going to be possible because people that have a higher score won't want to talk to somebody with a lower score because that'll bring their score down. You know, you're going to keep shopping at Waitrose. You'll never go to Aldi, even if Aldi has the absolute perfect olive oil that you need, and it's not sold in Waitrose, and you're like, oh my gosh, I really need that oil because it's from Germany and they don't have it in Waitrose. You will not go to Aldi because that brings your score down. And that's unfortunately what's happening in China. They have no interaction now. Where they've gone to trial this, people that have certain categories of scores are not interacting with people outside of those. The lower people are trying to get higher, and the higher people are going, hell no. And so I'm just going to wrap up there because I wanted to just have you think about that in the terms of what's going to happen in the future when we've given all this information. And unfortunately, as I say, you know, no shit. There are good people in the world, there are bad people in the world. And unfortunately, in any group, there's going to be somebody who's going to be wanting to use that tech for bad because it's going to make them a whole lot more money than doing it for good. And so I want you to think about that when you are giving information, what exactly you're giving. It's great to get the insights for you, but you really have to think about what does that say when it's added to everybody else's? What's that going to portray for the future? Where are we going with the technology that we are building right now? I just want to leave you with that before you go to lunch. Go lunch, don't be depressed, eat, drink lots. And I just like using this picture because I took that at a castle in Germany, and it was really funny because people kept bringing their dogs, and the dogs were fertilizing the grounds, and so they stuck that up. But that's my, my company. I'm going to plug 50/50 Pledge is about getting more women into VC because there are not very many women given money. We're giving a lot of female founders a platform, but not very much money because, unfortunately, people at the top still giving the money are a lot of guys, and so there are not a lot of women that look like me, or a lot of women, period. So that's that 50/50 Pledge. And Salaam, a venture fund that I started with a friend who is Muslim, and it's really just around ethical startups. We try to focus on companies that are not involved with weaponry, because I was in the Army Reserve for 12 years, so I've done my time. This is probably my penance, I think. My company Miribure, which is mitigating risk, building resilience, and that is really where I help people with strategic and competitive intelligence, finding the white spaces, and that's identifying all those different pieces of disparate information and putting them together. And that's what I just did. I just pulled apart little things that you are very much aware of. You do sometimes go, oh, I don't want to give them that much information. But then you say, accept. And you're not really thinking about when you accept something on one platform, how it partners with something on another platform. So our bodies are made up of all these different cells, and when you put them together, you have one person. And that's what you really need to think about when you're basically giving away your information. And remember, in the future, data is power, and you just have to remember to protect what your data is, to protect and secure your data. Don't give it away for free, because it will be your capital in the future. That's just airport security. I thought I'd throw that in. Facial recognition. Beware, that software is there, but we already have it, but I think that's going to play a part into our social capital in the future. There's just some extra slides. I didn't even get to the whole point of your house. We won't even talk about Echo, Alexa, how that's also going to feed into the monitoring of you when you're in your house, whether or not you're eating something, how it's going to be plugged into your refrigerator, where you ordered that food from, and guess what? Also being able to monitor your health. I'm sorry, Jeremy. That's okay, you still love me. But, the who, the where, the how, the why, and that's just a really cool picture I had. So, that's it. I won't say anything else because, I think I've just crushed the hopes and dreams of everybody that works in tech. Jeremy, Bruce, I'm sorry. You can still be my friend, right? I'm just still going to, use my Twitter account. I'll still be, buddies with IBM and Watson. And I'm done.